Right now, the most lucrative piece of real estate for a U.S. commercial contractor isn't in Texas. And it isn't in Virginia's data center alley either.
No, absolutely not. It's actually sitting on a newly funded digital port in Latin America.
Right. Last week, Google dropped a $500 million match into this, absolute powder keg of a market. And look, expanding into Latin American construction is, it's a lot like plugging a 120-volt U.S. power tool into a 240-volt foreign outlet.
That is a very good way to look at it.
Yeah, because the power is absolutely there.
Yeah.
And the machine works perfectly, but if you don't use the right adapter, you'll just fry your entire business in a second. So welcome to this deep dive for the Scaling Legends podcast. Today, our mission is to hand you, the construction business owner, that exact adapter.
Exactly. We are mapping out the financial, legal, and operational converters you need to tap into this massive booming market right south of the border.
It's huge.
It is a profound shift. I mean, for decades, U.S. contractors viewed Latin America as a closed ecosystem. But that $500 million Google investment isn't just an infrastructure upgrade.
Right, it's way more than that.
In the hyperscaler ecosystem, it acts as the ultimate catalyst. It forces an immediate reaction.
Okay, let's unpack this mechanism because the sheer volume of money moving south is just staggering. According to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, the Latin America data center construction market is currently sitting at roughly $2.8 billion. But it's projected to skyrocket to over $6.93 billion by 2031.
Which is wild.
We are talking about a 14% compound annual growth rate. I mean, in heavy commercial construction, 14% growth isn't a trend, it's a tectonic plate shifting.
Which is exactly why the Google investment is a signal flare. When one tech giant makes a foundational commitment to a digital port, they're essentially locking down local cloud sovereignty and reducing latency for millions of users. So Microsoft, AWS, and Meta, they cannot afford to be a millisecond slower in a rapidly digitizing continent.
They lose too much ground.
Exactly. Google's move forces every other hyperscaler to accelerate their own regional buildouts just to maintain parity.
So it's a starting gun. But if we are looking at this map, where exactly does a U.S. firm point their compass? I mean, is this going to be like the data center gold rush in Ashburn, Virginia?
In terms of scale, yes. But geographically, it's spread out. You have to look at the underlying drivers for each country.
Okay, so where exactly should we be looking? Let's break this down region by region.
Well, Mexico is currently the undisputed leader. They're capturing the largest share of this boom. But it's not just because they share a border with the U.S.
Right, there's more to it.
Yeah, it comes down to direct integration with the U.S. electrical grid and major logistical plays like the Tehuantepec corridor.
Right, the nearshoring tailwind. Manufacturers are moving from Asia to Mexico, which means they need local data processing, which obviously drives data center demand.
Precisely the mechanism. Plus, moving heavy specialized equipment like switchgear or, massive cooling units by rail from Texas to Monterey is infinitely easier than shipping it across oceans.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So Mexico is the safe play, the logistical bridge.
Yes. Mexico represents the most accessible bridge for North American capital.
Yeah.
But if you shift your focus to pure scale and long-term sustainability, you look at Brazil.
Because data centers are basically just giant power vacuums, right?
They are massive power consumption engines. And right now, hyperscalers are chained to these strict, publicly mandated carbon neutral pledges. So Brazil acts as the tech hub for the entire Southern Hemisphere, specifically because of its absolute abundance of renewable energy.
Wait, primarily hydroelectric power, right?
Exactly. Having access to abundant green power is it's a non-negotiable requirement for these tech giants to build at scale.
Okay, so Mexico is the logistical bridge. Brazil is the renewable powerhouse. Where does a contractor go if they are looking for a highly engineered premium market? Or maybe they are willing to take on more risk for a faster growth rate.
Well, for the premium tier market, you go to Chile.
Okay.
Chile boasts a highly stable electrical grid, which is crucial. But the real differentiator is their seismic activity. They have some of the most rigorous earthquake codes on the planet.
Oh, wow. That immediately changes the structural engineering requirements. You aren't just pouring a standard slab.
Not at all. The base isolation systems, the structural steel requirements for raised server floors, it requires intense, highly specialized engineering.
That makes sense.
That creates a very high-quality, resilient infrastructure environment. But on the flip side, if you want fast growth, You look at Colombia.
Colombia.
Really, it's an emerging hub. It's earlier in its maturity cycle compared to Mexico or Brazil, but the growth curve is incredibly aggressive.
And what about Argentina? Because the technical talent pool there is historically very strong.
The talent is definitely there, but the advice is very clearly to watch and wait.
Why is that?
The issue is severe currency risk. Undertaking large-scale, multi-year capital projects in a hyperinflationary environment makes underwriting nearly impossible right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But this brings up the massive elephant in the room.
This geography breakdown makes sense, but let's be real. If I'm a mid-sized U.S. electrical contractor, I can't just hop on a plane to Sao Paulo, knock on a door, and start pouring concrete, right?
Right, you kid.
So who is actually controlling these projects, and how do we get a foot in the door?
You have to understand the prime contractor landscape, and it is dominated by a mix of heavy-hitting local giants and familiar international players. In Brazil, you have massive domestic conglomerates like Construtora Norberto Odebrecht.
Okay.
You have Spanish giants with massive Latin American footprints,
Right.
like Grupo ACS subsidiaries and Acciona. And in Mexico, you are looking at domestic primes like ICA, Carso, and Andrade Gutierrez. Wait, hold on. You're telling me that a massive Brazilian prime contractor like Odebrecht, a company that literally builds hydroelectric dams and international airports, is controlling the site? If they already have the home field advantage and like an army of labor, why would they ever let a mid-sized U.S. contractor onto their site? That sounds like a total monopoly.
It looks like a monopoly until you realize that familiar U.S. primes are deeply entrenched there alongside them.
Really? Like who?
Companies like Bechtel, Latin America, Jacobs, and Parsons. But more importantly, you aren't doing this alone. The U.S. government has built massive structural support frameworks specifically designed to pull U.S. contractors into these foreign markets to compete.
What kind of structural support? Do you mean like trade agreements?
Well, trade agreements like the USMCA framework in Mexico provide the legal bedrock, yes. But I'm talking about hard financing. There are literal entry routes.
Okay, I'm listening.
The U.S. government actively works to de-risk these projects for you. The Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, provides financing specifically for U.S.-led projects abroad. You also have USAID partnerships and Commerce Department trade missions. Then you have the EXIM Bank, the Export-Import Bank of the United States.
Okay, let's break that down for the business owner listening. How does the EXIM Bank actually help a U.S. construction firm win a bid in, say, Colombia?
EXIM provides export credit guarantees. So let's say you are exporting your highly specialized engineering services to a data center project in Bogota. The foreign buyer, the project developer, needs a loan to pay you.
Right.
EXIM will step in and guarantee that commercial loan. If the developer defaults, the U.S. government ensures the lender gets paid.
Wow.
This means the commercial banks are incredibly eager to finance projects that use U.S. contractors because the U.S. government is essentially co-signing the risk.
That is a massive competitive advantage. You aren't just bringing your construction expertise, you are bringing U.S.-backed financial security to the project's capital stack.
Exactly. Sovereign-backed project finance is dominant in this region. You frequently see commercial bank syndicated loans paired with this exact DFC or EXIM backing. Public-private partnerships, or PPPs, are really common for grid and data center development too. It turns what looks like a risky foreign venture into a highly stable, financially insured project.
But this brings us back to the scope of work.
Yeah.
We established that these local primes can pour concrete cheaper and faster than a U.S. firm flying down their own labor. So you don't necessarily have to be the prime contractor to make a fortune here, right? You just need to have the right specialty.
Oh, absolutely. General contracting is a race to the bottom on margins if you are competing with local giants. You do not go to Latin America to pour concrete or erect basic steel. You go for the high-value niches.
Right, because Latin America doesn't necessarily need U.S. companies for general labor. They need us for highly specific technical trades.
Exactly. The deeply technical trades.
The brain surgery trades of the construction world.
It's even less forgiving than that. I mean, a brain surgeon has a team in the room to catch a mistake. In a hyperscale data center, a single microblip in medium voltage distribution doesn't just stop a surgery, it cascades, taking millions of dollars of cloud data offline instantly. Zero tolerance means exactly zero.
So what specialties are actually in demand? We are talking about highly specialized electrical contractors who can handle high voltage substations.
High voltage substations and medium voltage distribution, but also mechanical contractors specializing in precision HVAC for server halls.
Of course.
Cooling a 1 million square foot data center is not like cooling an office tower. The thermal loads generated by AI server racks are staggering, and the cooling tolerances are microscopic. You need rigorous commissioning processes.
Right.
You need structural engineering for raised flooring. You need clean agent fire suppression systems and incredibly complex mechanical, electrical, and plumbing controls.
So even if a local prime can build a state-of-the-art airport, they might not have the hyper-specific zero-tolerance track record for installing cooling systems that prevent an AI server farm from melting down.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these specialized trades represent the critical path for hyperscalers. If the power or cooling fails, the whole data center fails. U.S. contractors who have a proven track record of building these systems to hyperscaler standards have immense leverage.
That makes a lot of sense. You're paying a premium for peace of mind on the most vulnerable components of the build.
Right.
But let's ground this in reality, right? It is very easy to talk about high-margin specialties while we sit here. But what happens when a U.S. contractor's boots actually hit the dirt regarding rules, language, and red tape? Because according to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, contractors need to prepare for 6 to 18-month permit timelines across the board. You are not getting a green light in 30 days.
Yeah, that 6 to 18-month timeline is the reality of the regulatory landscape. You are navigating a complex web of local agencies, this whole regulatory alphabet soup.
Right, the dreaded red tape. What does this actually look like in practice? Give me the impartial breakdown.
Let's use Mexico as an example. You have SEMARNET for environmental permits, NUM 001 SEED for electrical, and LFT for labor.
Wow. Okay.
In Brazil, it's IBAMA for environmental, NR10 for electrical, and CLT for labor. And in Chile, you deal with C for environmental, SEC for electrical, and CT for labor.
That is a lot of acronyms to keep track of, so you really have to localize your engineering. What about the labor force you're managing on-site?
The local labor is cheaper but highly skilled. However, there are massive compliance hurdles. Language capabilities, Spanish or Portuguese, depending on the region, must be integrated into your site management. You cannot run a complex, dangerous job site through a translation app.
No, obviously not.
Furthermore, there is a very strong union presence. In Mexico, you negotiate with the CTM. In Brazil, you work with the CUT.
And I imagine if you were working on a massive grid upgrade or a state project, you aren't just paying minimum wage.
Not at all. U.S. contractors should expect to pay a Davis-Bacon equivalent prevailing wage on state-backed projects. You have to factor those prevailing wages into your initial bid.
This raises the broader question of managing risk. We've talked about permitting delays and labor requirements, but what about physical infrastructure itself?
Grid interconnection queues are a massive bottleneck. It's actually very similar to what U.S. contractors face right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can build state-of-the-art data center in record time, but waiting for the utility to physically plug you into the high-voltage grid can cause massive delays. You also face political risks. A changing administration can suddenly alter the terms of a project.
And let's talk about the silent killer of international construction, the money itself.
Currency volatility. It will wipe you out if you don't respect it. The Mexican peso, Brazilian real, Chilean peso all fluctuate against the US dollar daily.
Let's break this down practically. If I bid a $10 million contract in pesos, and the peso drops 5% while I'm procuring materials, my profit margin just evaporated. How do you protect against that?
Crucial advice. Always add a 2 to 5% FX foreign exchange contingency to every single USD-denominated contract. This hedges against peso or real fluctuations.
Okay, we've covered the geography, the prime contractor landscape, the specific high-value trades, the realities of federal permitting, and the mechanism of currency risk. It is a massive amount of intelligence. But how does a listener, a construction business owner, synthesize all this complex international risk into a tangible action plan starting tomorrow morning?
By focusing on a highly specific 90-day playbook, you cannot attack a continent. You have to attack a highly defined target.
Okay, let's walk through the playbook. Step 1.
Step 1. Pick exactly one country to start. Do not diversify your entry. For most U.S. contractors, Mexico is recommended as the most accessible entry point.
Okay, focus fire on Mexico. Step 2.
Step 2. Register with 3 target primes. Do not blast your portfolio into the void. Identify 3 specific prime contractors, aim for at least 1 US-based prime already operating there, and 1 local giant.
Which leads to step 3. You have to look in the mirror.
Right. Step 3, assess your internal language and legal capabilities. Identify your gaps and solve them before you bid.
Step 4 is where we bring in that structural financial support.
Yeah. Step 4, book briefings with the DFC and the EXIM bank. You need to understand what you qualify for.
And step 5.
You have to get on the ground. Step 5 is book a ticket to attend Data Center World Latin America or Future.com in Sao Paulo to network on the ground. You need to shake hands with these primes in person.
And just to underscore that this isn't some theoretical projection about what might happen in 5 years, right now, today, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report is tracking 14 active data center procurements on their Latin America bid board.
Exactly.
The work is there right now for those ready to move.
The window is open right now, but it will not stay open forever.
Which leaves you with this final thought to chew on. We open by talking about the assumed risk of crossing the border, the 240-volt outlet that could fry your business if you don't use the right adapter. But consider this. What if the greatest risk to your company's growth isn't venturing into Latin America? What if the greatest risk is staying comfortable at home, missing out on the single largest localized data center boom of the decade, all while your competitors figure out the cross-border playbook?
In a rapidly globalizing infrastructure market, standing still is the most aggressive risk you can take.
Absolutely. If you know a contractor who is looking to expand their hyperscale or data center portfolio but feels stuck in the crowded U.S. market, send them this episode. It could be the exact roadmap they need to win cross-border contracts. Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. Visit smartbusinessautomator.com to learn more.